Hello and welcome back. If you have not reviewed part 1 of this training, please be sure to go back and review the Attainment Task Training part 1. If you are just now joining us for part 2 of Kentucky's Alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment Combined Overview Attainment Task Training, I'm Krista Mullins with the Office of Assessment and Accountability in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support. This part of the training will focus primarily on information related to the administration protocol of the attainment tasks. On this slide, you will find a link to the Combined Attainment Task Administration Guide. Please open or download the administration guide for today's training. It is also found on the Kentucky Alternate Assessment Resources page. Many quiz questions will come from the administration guide, so it is critical to have access to it. Completing this training should prepare each participant to accurately administer the attainment tasks. Correct administration is crucial to getting accurate information from the assessment. Therefore, it is important to take time to fully understand the administration procedures. The attainment tasks are intended to assess students in the content areas that all students are tested on as part of the general assessment, but not all content areas are required by the Every Student Succeeds Act. This is a requirement of IDEA, which requires students with disabilities to participate in every district or statewide assessment, but allows alternate testing methods for students with significant disabilities. An attainment task, or AT, is a one-on-one assessment that requires the student to answer questions read by the teacher or test administrator. The ATs are in a multiple choice format, with each AT consisting of a set of 5 questions or items, all of which are based on an authentic task. The teacher or test administrator will sit with the student, ask the questions, watch for the student response, and record the student response. New this year in Window 1 and Window 2, teachers will be asked to administer field test tasks to all students taking the AKSA. The purpose of field test items is to grow the test bank, provide release items to support instruction, and ensure students on the AKSA have the same opportunities as students in the general KSA. These field test items may be used in future operational assessments. For each content area that the student is assessed based on their grade level, there will be one field test task administered. The exception is science, as new standards were released in July 2023 for instructional purposes in the 2023-2024 school year. For example, in Window 1, a 4th grade student would field test one task in reading and another in mathematics, whereas a 5th grader would field test one task in each of the following: reading, mathematics, social studies, and editing and mechanics. There will be 3 forms of the field test for each grade and content level. Test administrators will receive only one form of the field test. In each student record in the SRD, test administrators must enter which form they administered. The form number can be found in the upper right-hand corner of the field test task, as indicated by the red circle. The attainment tasks are considered secure testing materials. This means that they cannot be used for instruction, shared with anyone not authorized, and must be kept in a secure location while not in use. The alternate assessment materials should be treated like the general education testing materials. All testing materials must be returned to the appropriate district administrator for secure storage. Some content areas may include supplemental materials that need to be downloaded or materials that are provided for hands-on use during the assessment. All materials will be returned to the DAC. The DAC will destroy all materials except for their district copy, which they will retain until the close of Window 2. Teachers will complete both the Alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment Overview and AT training modules and pass the online qualification quiz prior to receiving or administering the attainment tasks. Teachers will need to print a copy of the quiz certificate for the DAC, BAC, DOS, or the District Alternate Assessment Administrator to store in a location selected by the district. The AT Resource Guide provides additional information to help clarify testing protocols and facilitate instruction, including adaptations and modifications, specific content items, information about orienting students to materials, a picture glossary of terms for each content area. Once the resource guide is posted, it may be used all year for instructional purposes. Several attainment tasks contain supplemental materials that are necessary for completing the assessment. Here you can see examples of supplemental materials that are found in the supplemental materials envelope for each grade. It is important to note that animations include closed captioning and non-closed captioning options. Districts may request supplemental materials for students who have been identified with a visual impairment on their IEPs. Requests for materials should be submitted by the DAC to KDE no later than September 6, 2023. Copies of attainment tasks can be made in order to provide to another alternate assessment teacher in the school or to cut pictures apart for administration without damaging the original. If any school-level materials are missing or damaged, this should be communicated immediately to the DAC or District Alternate Assessment Administrator. Additional materials or copies may be used from the district binder provided to each DAC. Each school with students participating in the alternate assessment will receive one attainment task testing binder for the grades represented in the school. Once the online quiz has been completed and prior to the administration, materials may be reviewed. Materials will be shipped for Window 1 the week of October 23rd and will be received no later than October 30th. The task administration for Window 1 begins November 13th, 2023. The attainment task administration for Window 1 closes December 15th, 2023. The Student Registration Database, or SRD, will open for Window 1 AT and TAR score entry beginning November 13th, 2023, and will close for AT Window 1 entry only on December 22nd, 2023. It is important to provide the appropriate accommodations. The AT Administration Guide provides a list of acceptable accommodations taken from the accommodation guidelines for students with IEPs that are taking the general assessment. Refer to the inclusion of special populations document located on KDE's website for additional information on allowable accommodations. If the test administrator has questions or concerns about specific accommodations, contact me, Krista Mullins, or Kristen Roseberry in the Office of Assessment and Accountability. This slide provides a list of possible accommodations used in instruction and how they can be used for the ATs. I'm going to read over them and possibly explain a little more about each. If the student uses an eye gaze board where pictures or words are placed on a board and the student looks at his or her selected answer for instruction, then it is fine to cut apart the picture choices and put them on the board as long as the same order or sequence is maintained. If a student doesn't use pictures, then it is fine to present or read the answer choices without the pictures, unless the picture response options are a necessary component to answering the question. Some students require verbal directions to start, continue, and complete a task. If this is provided during instruction, it is okay to do so during AT administration. This might be something like, look at the choices. Which one is the correct answer? Point to the answer, etc. Large print copies are acceptable. Remember that the test administrator is always reading the answer choices, so the student doesn't need to be able to read the words. Some students must be oriented to the materials. If this is done during instruction, it is okay to do so during the assessment. For example, the test administrator may take the student's hand and place it on each answer and state, this is the car, this is the wagon, this is the airplane. Then pull the student's hand back and ask the student to select the answer. Physical support is okay if it is not physically guiding the student to the answer. Acceptable physical support would be something like supporting the student's elbow or forearm so that he or she can move laterally, or supporting the student's head so that he or she can see the eye gaze board. This is another example of an accommodation that is acceptable based on what the student uses for instruction. Some students who use symbols may have symbols with the same meaning. In that case, the symbol can be exchanged. However, if you change one picture, you must change all response options for that question. Pictures should be similar in format, and the correct picture response option should not be stylistically different from the others. That is, the only picture in color or the only picture that is a photograph. Again, response options must be presented in the same order or sequence as they are presented in the original attainment task. It is very helpful to read through the attainment tasks and all items prior to administration. This will ensure fluency while reading the tasks, which in turn helps with student comprehension. If unsure about pronunciation, check with someone prior to administration. Some tasks have accompanying supplemental materials such as maps, graphs, or stories. These materials will be listed on the first page of the task and will be located at the end of the task. These items may be removed prior to the start of the task and presented to the student when needed. Some tasks will require the use of an audio or video file. These will be provided on the USB drive found in the supplemental materials envelope. If the use of an USB drive is not possible, these files will also be available for download from the online training system, or OTS. Directions for download will accompany testing materials. Words in the question that are bolded and underlined should be emphasized to the student. Example, not, most, likely, best, etc. All questions have been provided for student use at the end of the task. These questions can be cut apart, covered, or manipulated as needed. Use of the questions at the end of the task is optional. Read the script signified by quotation marks to the student exactly as written. If the task contains a closed sentence, fill in the blank. The test administrator may read the sentence with each option. Picture or answer choices may be provided in any format as long as the order of the binder is maintained. For example, up and down, side to side, in corners of page. The sequence of A, B, and C cannot change. Remember that any change to response options must be made to all response options in a question. The tasks must be administered in the same content order that is provided within the binder. For example, a grade 3 student would first complete the reading assessment before moving on to the mathematics assessment on the next day an assessment is given. So the reading test would be given first, as it is the first assessment in the grade 3 binder. Then on the next day a test is administered, it would be mathematics. When starting the AT administration, remember that it is to be administered in a one-on-one setting, although additional adults may be present for assistance to the student if needed. It is important not to teach any part of the task prior to administration or in between administration sessions. The 5-minute break between each 5-item task is optional and may be taken or not. However, sometimes students require a break within a 5-item set. If a student requires a break, teachers or test administrators may orient the student to where they were in the process before restarting. Teachers or test administrators should never restart an item set from the beginning. Students may only complete one content area per day. If a situation occurs and a district needs to request to test more than one content area per day, please contact your district assessment coordinator to work out details with KDE. As mentioned earlier, pictures are considered supplemental materials. If the student responds better to words than pictures, you don't have to provide pictures to the student, unless the picture response option is required as part of the question. The attainment task is a multiple choice assessment, and all response options must be presented. The text must be read aloud by the test administrator or by the student. Encouraging the student to work and reinforcing the student for working is acceptable. The student should not be provided feedback on the accuracy of any response. The test administrator can provide multiple opportunities for the student to respond before assigning a no response code. If at any time the test administrator feels the student is not engaged or off task, they may reread an item based on their observation. This is only permitted for students on the alternate assessment. During test administration, you should read the item to the student and also read each answer choice. If needed, orient the student to the response options prior to reading each question. For example, read and/or point to each response option prior to asking the question. Again, as shared on slide 21, it is okay to reread the script or task question and point to each answer choice while rereading it. It is important to allow the student to show what he or she knows independently. Here is a reminder of things that is not allowed and could result in an allegation being filed. Prompting correct answers in any way, giving the student another try to get the correct response, or recording scores based on expected responses. The test administrator must record the student's first independent response, as it's not the test administrator's role to decide if the student is guessing. Using the answer sheet, the test administrator will enter student responses into the Student Registration Database, or SRD. A response must be recorded before moving on to the next item. If the student fails to respond, the test administrator may select the no response option. It is okay for the student to change his or her response as long as he or she does so independently. The student has not been cued in any way by the teacher, and the teacher has not moved to the next item. Anyone who administers a state assessment, which includes the attainment task administration, must complete the administration code and inclusion of special populations training prior to the assessment administration. If any classified staff or non-school personnel assists with the student during the assessment, they must sign a non-disclosure form, which must be stored in a location selected by the district. When all information has been entered in the Student Registration Database, or SRD, place the student's answer sheet in a secure location and give all school-level testing materials to the district or building assessment coordinator, district of special education, or district alternate assessment administrator to be securely destroyed. Don't forget to delete any assessment files placed on the computer and empty the recycling bin. The Window 1 attainment tasks must be administered by December 15, 2023. Student scores must be entered into the Student Registration Database, or SRD, for Window 1 by December 22, 2023. If there are issues with technology, contact your school or district technology coordinator to make sure the issue is not local. If the issue is determined to be on the department's end, email Daryl Mattingly. For issues with timelines or task completion, have the DAC, BAC, DOS, or District Alternate Assessment Administrator contact me to discuss any situations like this. For the Window 2 administration, materials will ship the weeks of March 25th through March 29th for option 1, or April 1st through 5th for option 2. Materials will be received no later than April 1st, 2024 for option 1 and April 8th, 2024 for option 2. The second testing window will begin April 15th, 2024. The SRD will also open April 15th for window 2 score entry. The second testing window will close May 24th, 2024. Remember, districts reserve the right to conclude testing before May 24th, 2024 if they choose to. The last day to enter scores in the Student Registration Database, or SRD, for the second window is May 31st, 2024. As a reminder, the TAR will open on November 15th, 2023, and the Quality of School Climate and Safety results will open on April 15th, 2024. Both will remain open to submit in the SRD until May 31st, 2024. This concludes the Attainment Task Training. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at 502-564-4394 or at krista.mullins@education.ky.gov. Thank you for your time, and please be sure to complete your quiz.